Welcome to the No Streetlights podcast. I'm Aaron.
And I'm Tim. We'll be engaging in stimulating conversations every week.
We want to encourage societal growth towards kindness through understanding.
These conversations and the associated language can be triggering.
Listen at your own discretion.
But please reach out if we need to be doing something better.
So, let's take a breath, relax, and be welcome.
Aaron, who have you brought with us this week?
Your mom.
You said that wrong. Try again.
Oh, it's my mom.
Yeah. Welcome, Beth.
Thank you so much.
That's my mother's name.
She's a phenomenal woman.
She is. So what we've been through, how it changed us,
and what
we
we've
learned. Go ahead, Tim.
Beth, I've known you now for as long as I've known Aaron, and I have always been incredibly happy with our relationship, getting to know you. You always message me and check up on me a lot, and I am awful at responding, but I have really spent a lot of my past couple of years trying to avoid being on social media as much, which, if anything, this podcast is making me have to go back on that a bit. So I guess I'm more on social media these days. But you've been a massive part of my development growing up and everything. I think you probably had a bigger impact on Aaron.
Well, maybe he didn't always listen.
That's still a problem I'm
I'm
working with. Before we get started, I think a nice icebreaker would be if you gave a review of young Tim. How was Tim when he was growing up, man?
Ooh.
a little dorky.
Okay.
Oh.
He was very sweet and nice. He was polite. He was quiet. But yeah, a little on the nerdy side, but you guys were perfectly made to be friends.
Okay, Aaron and I had the same glasses for years. If I was nerdy, he was nerdy.
Oh, yes, absolutely. He was nerdy with an N. Capital N.
Hell yeah.
Crash Bandicoot style.
Damn
Big ol' N.
That's
Damn
right.
straight.
And look at you now,
Yeah.
both of you.
Hardly recognize us.
Yes. I've got lots of pictures of you guys and us.
Oh, man. We might have to go into the archives for the photos for this one.
Yeah.
Okay, I can forward some.
One thing that we're doing here, Mom, is telling your story.
Okay.
Do you kind of want to start off with where you're from?
Yes, I grew up just my mom and dad and sister and I had a very idyllic childhood. We were fairly spoiled, not really wealthy, but didn't do without.
Mm-hmm.
I was very much daddy's little girl as a tomboy because I was the son he never had. I followed him around when he was messing with the cars or out tinkering with whatever he was doing. I always was more interested in what dad was doing. So I was a little closer to dad than mom.
That explains some of the scars.
Yes. Just nonstop. You know, my sister she liked to play with dolls and read books, and she was 2 years older. So then I came along and I was 100% different. And I want to be outside climbing trees and playing with my dog and all the fun things in life and enjoying nature.
Okay, all of these things are making sense for Aaron now. I'm getting
Yes. He didn't fall far from that tree, thank heavens.
it.
I don't fall from trees very often anymore.
If you did, you'd be in a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
That'll only add to more scars, which we don't need. So childhood was really great. I had a lot of friends. I still have a lot of friends that I've been friends with since kindergarten or first grade. Then I went to college, got out, got married, and that didn't go really very well. It was quite a slap in the face for what I was expecting. I thought I would grow up and marry a man like my dad with a life like my dad, because back in my generation, we had specific roles. Wife stayed home with the kids and the husband went to work and earned the bread and she took care of the house. So I wasn't really expecting things to go the way they did for me. So that was a major slap in reality. That was kind of traumatic because I wasn't really sure what to even do with it. But I worked full time and your kids came along and I just had to take care of you and keep the house going. So you just do what you have to do. I think I kind of just went into survival mode at that point because there was just so much to go through and keep done.
Mhm.
Right. And I know we're probably going to dive a little bit deeper into this, but when it comes to talking about the trauma that you faced during your first marriage, something that I know kind of came to my mind during our brainstorm session is we're hearing the history of a person we've already spoke to, and this was when they were at the worst of their life.
Right.
And they're a completely different person now.
Absolutely.
But, we can't judge a person based off their past if they have worked really hard to fix themselves and they've put in the time and the effort to change their habits. So, like I said, I just wanted to put that out there before we dive too deep into this, because I know we're about to shine a light on a situation that some people might not want to listen to another particular episode or one of our guests.
I think we'll touch on this pretty lightly due to how intense the situation was.
Okay.
So this first marriage to my father was very traumatic, very unhealthy, a lot of drugs, alcohol, rock and roll, and Dad had no idea how to deal with any of his mental disorders or his traumas. So it just got worse and worse and worse until the straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak.
Yep.
Yes.
Would you feel comfortable telling us that story just as the example for how bad it got?
Yes. And I want to say first, though, with Tim, I will be the first to say how proud I am of your dad. I will always have his back still. I could not be more proud of the changes he has made through the struggles. He's had some very hard struggles, and off and on we've been friends. We are, we've had a few problems, but we're exes and that happens. But for the most part, I think he knows I will always have his back, and I know he will always have mine. And
definitely
would not do anything but sing his praises at this point in the game, because he has made tremendous progress, and I just could not be more proud.
I mean, you guys just ran some errands together like last week.
Saturday, yeah.
Yeah. So.
And Friday, I ran by there too. So, yeah, we're fine, and we both made it home with no marks or scars. So.
Thank God.
Well, that's progress, because we've both been put out of the car from time to time in the past.
Yeah.
So the catalyst in what Aaron was talking about was Forrest just really snapped one night, I guess. It was nothing that should have set him off, but he had been in the garage for a little while, and he came back up and was madder than he could stand to be, and wound up, long story short, pulling a couple guns after he trashed the house and ripped the phones out of the wall. He loaded 2 pistols and was going to shoot the kids and then me and then himself. And that went on for most of the night. And then he just snapped out of it and said, "Let's go to bed. I'm tired." So needless to say, that did not happen. And I went the next day and tried to get steps rolling to get him some help. And he expected to go to jail. He said, when I got home the next day, he said, "I waited all day for the cops to show up." And I said, "You don't need to go to jail. You need help." So he voluntarily went to St. Joe and started this long journey that he's been on. And 30 years or 30, I think he's probably got about 30 years in now, 31 maybe.
Yep.
So, that's an astounding accomplishment. But I was just at my breaking point with him. I didn't believe for a minute he would hurt the children. And I was fairly certain he would not hurt me. But, it crossed my mind he might shoot himself, which would not have been a good thing either. So, I just knew the situation had to be remedied one way or the other. So he went to rehab, and the kids and I moved along.
Yeah. And one thing that we talked about during the brainstorm session was this was about, you said 12 years in the making, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So the marriage was with him for 12 years. And this story, the catalyst that you talked about, this isn't a super unique situation to the history that you guys have had. This was just the final situation. And you said that we're done. This is it. I need to protect my children and myself, and you need help.
Right. Yes, because he was only deteriorating. And alcohol is such a poison. You're not going to get better. You can't continue down that path. And so, yes, it is a touchy subject, but no one's going to win with alcohol. It destroys families. It destroys lives. It's horrible.
It's a touchy subject, but
Yes.
I feel like we need to have conversations that make
Absolutely.
people a little uncomfortable in order to make things better.
Because I think so many people feel alone and they think, oh, I'm the only one that's going through this. When no, you're not. You need to speak up and make sure, like you guys are trying to do, let people know you're not alone. We are all out here struggling with one way or another. We all have things we're fighting or have fought, and maybe we could be of some value like you guys are doing exactly, to help someone else from our experience.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So then it was just me and the kids.
Which you thought was going to be hard.
Yes, and it was really more refreshing. Had it not been just the three of us, it would have been harder because we got a good system going. I mean, I worked and you kids were in school and you both had sports going on. So, we had a routine and it went. So it was really a lot easier when I was just taking care of you children instead of trying to survive in general.
Yeah.
And I was blessed with some very good jobs. I worked for FedEx for 12 years. When that came to an abrupt halt, which that's really one of the most traumatic things for me, I believe, was losing my job, because that's also a touchy subject, which a lot of people probably don't know. The real reason I lost it was I had failed a random drug test, and just marijuana, but you don't test positive for marijuana when you have a driving job. They don't like that. So they called me when I was 2 days into vacation and said, oh, by the way, you aren't going to have a job anymore. So, I went from having 2 little kids to support 100% and had to pay my ex alimony and all of our marriage debts and stuff. It was, you're making a good bit of money, and I was high on seniority and vacations. And next thing you know, you don't have a job.
Yeah.
So that was a bit stressful, but I'm very resourceful. And, my boss and I sat in the office and he cried and said, what are you going to do? And, what are you going to do? And I said, I'll figure it out. I'm very resourceful. I'm resilient. Me and the kids will be fine. And we were.
In my 30 years of knowing this story in different levels, I never once stopped to think about the debt and stuff that you brought into being a single mom. I just thought you started at zero.
Mm-hmm.
Even in my marriage, we're both 2 grown adults who have incomes, but we still have debt because that's the American dream that they sold us from like the 30s, that you should have a car and a house and be $400K in debt. That means you're successful.
Right.
Spend money to make money.
Something like that. I don't know how they sold that for as long as they have.
They're still selling it, dude.
And so many are buying it.
I never once thought that like maybe 20% of your check was already tied up in credit card payments from when you bought furniture for your house.
Right.
I never thought about that.
And alimony and the payments I still had on the place where we lived, because we, lived out in Rockport, and we moved to town because the place needed quite a bit of work and repair that hadn't been done. And it was too much for me at that point to do by myself or to get done. I couldn't afford to pay somebody to come in there and make the repairs because I was carrying the load. So we were going to sell the place and move to town where we would just be closer if winter was coming. So I thought we just need to go elsewhere. And me and you and your sister moved to town and the dogs. It was great. It was hard as a single mom. I wouldn't discredit any single mothers out there at all. It is hard doing it by yourself, but I'm a very strong person and I'm a very physical person. I like hard work. I see that as a challenge more than a dread. At FedEx, they would say, oh, you can't do 40 stops in morning stops. And I'm like, watch me. And that to me was a personal challenge. And I will show you I can. So I've always kind of had that spirit, even when I was little or young. I had that about me. Don't tell me I can't, because I will, just to show you. And I still have an edge of that, but I've hopefully wised up a little, because some things I just can't. Not anymore. But, you just do what you have to. And I've never been one to just give up. That's what I've always told my kids. Just don't give up. I don't care if you have to crawl. Keep crawling. Movement is movement. Just keep going and you'll get through it.
Yeah, there was an incredible story you told us during our brainstorming session about how you had broken your foot but kept working. Can you kind of talk a little bit about that?
Oh, sure. That's just one of many, many stories that would probably blow your mind. I broke my foot. I worked at FedEx, like I said, and I was a courier. Well, my route was a extended route, so I drove 90 miles before I even started. Well, there was no one down there to help me, and I was out of radio range. So I broke my foot about 10:10, actually, in the morning at Dark Container. And I knew it was broken because I've broken other things. And there's just a whole different feeling. So I went on, I met my friends at lunch, and I'm like, oh, I broke my foot, because they wondered why I was late. Well, they're trying to get me to take my boot off. And I'm like, nope, because that'll be a major problem. So I got through my day and I got in the building about almost 8 o'clock instead of a little before 6. That was my scheduled time. And my boss had waited on me to see what was wrong because he said he knew something was wrong or I wouldn't have been late. And I told him my foot was broken. I'm standing there with both my shoes on. So from 10:10 in the morning until about 10 to 8, I just worked and made my pickups and all my deliveries. And then he's like, well, go in there and take your shoe off and we'll look at it. I said, that's fine. I know it's broken. And we had a ex-professional football player, or semi-pro football player, was our ramp agent. And he said, let Carol look at your foot. Well, I probably had more injuries than Carol, even though I never played football. So he came in there, grown men would turn their head. They looked at my foot and they're like, oh, no. So I went to the hospital that night after I got off work. My boss did my paperwork and unloaded my truck. I went home and changed my clothes and went to the hospital. And they said, oh, yeah. So I called him back to tell him about 12:30 at night. It was probably 11 o'clock by then. About 12:30 at night, he called me back and said, can you please just work the next couple of days and train somebody? Nobody knows your route. So I worked for the next 3 days with my broken foot and just propped it up on the side of the truck. Luckily, it wasn't a standard and it was my left foot. So I just propped it up and drove with my right foot and trained somebody. And
yeah, it's not so bad. If it's an automatic and it's your left foot, you're set.
Yeah, I didn't have to shift gear. I mean, you can if you have to, but I didn't have to. So that was a blessing.
And hell, honestly, knowing you, I would not have been surprised if you'd been like, next couple of days, I'll just keep working. It's only a broken foot.
Well, they wouldn't let me for liability reasons.
Oh, that liability.
When I get a cast on, it's just going to slow me down a little bit. I promise. I can do it.
That damn OSHA regulations.
Oh, boy. Yeah. They didn't ask all of us about those rules.
One of the stories that I tell when people ask about my mom is every interview she's ever been to, she says that she'll outwork their top performer twice. She'll do twice the work of their top person. And she's not been wrong yet. At one of her jobs for the government, there was like a certain caseload and everyone was assigned like 10 cases a week. And most people were behind by like 40 cases. And mom kept asking for more cases. And they got to the point to where they would assign her like 30 a day. And she would still sometimes do 50 cases a day. Or she would hit people up, be like, hey, I heard you're behind by like 40 cases. Could you just give me what you're behind on?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's mom.
And I'm just one of those people, I don't sit very well. And I've also had jobs where I'm like, you either give me something to do or I'll go home. I don't care about getting paid. I have plenty of things to do at home, but I cannot sit here and twiddle my thumbs and watch the clock. I got to do something. It don't matter to me. I've had lots of money and I've had no money. So life goes on either way.
Okay. I put this out there and I'm going to go ahead and repeat it here. The world should be terrified of people with your mentality because you have this, it's almost like a give a damn and don't give a damn at the same time, right? Like that song, My Give a Damn is Busted. Mm-hmm. But it's like, for you, right? You're like, whatever. The world is going to happen. It's going to keep fucking spinning. I'm going to keep doing my part. Yep. If it's at this job, then it's at this job. If it's not, and you want me to go find a different place to work, I will.
Yep.
But I tell you what, no broken foot, no broken tailbone, nothing is going to stop me from doing the next damn thing.
That's exactly right. Because you just do. I mean, I know someone that is getting older and dementia starting to set in, and she's never really been she's kind of always been a little passive. And I think her ex-husband was quite controlling and stuff. So there's so many things that she won't even try. And my husband and I were just talking. It's so hard to comprehend that mentality that she won't even try. She will just sit there and wait for someone else to do it for her. I have had my back out before. And well, I was sick one time when I lived at the river by myself. I crawled back and forth for 4 days from my bedroom to the bathroom because I was too sick to walk. And I had wood heat and my fire went out and I was too sick to build a fire. I couldn't carry firewood. I couldn't even walk. So I just crawled back and forth. I didn't call 5 people to come and help me or do it for me or build a fire. I just knew it was going to snap. I thought I'll be, I'll either get better or I'm going to be dead in a day or two. I'm not sure, but something's going to happen.
We've been very close several times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What is up with it? It just must be like, I don't know. Maybe that's the thing that you and Forrest had in common, but it's like both of you. You're like, well, it's going to happen.
That's just the farmer mentality of like, if I'm about to die, I'll call someone and they'll take me to the hospital. And she's made that call, I think 3 times now. Like, hey, I'm about to die. Would you please take me to the hospital? Like,
damn. At least you made the call. That's what matters. God.
The worst I got was in college when I jacked up my ankle real bad. And turns out Vicodin does not agree with me.
Oh boy. Yeah.
Oh.
And I woke up like 2 weeks later in front of the fire at Mom's house on the river. And she was just like, came out sipping coffee and was like, oh, you didn't die. And I was like, yeah, I guess not. Can I have some water? And she's like, yeah, I'm going to pour you a coffee too, because I know you'll want coffee. And so that was normal like growing up, man.
She like threw you off the roof and said, go have fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It'll make them tough, man. I don't want to raise sissies.
That's why I was jumping off roofs when we met Tim.
Yeah, that explains so much more. I'm surprised though. A soccer ball took
I was
you out,
jumping
Aaron.
off the roofs when I was 7 or 8 years old. So, go ahead. It's fine.
And 57 and 47 and 37 as well.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Fair. That's very fair.
Okay, so I want to know, right? So you sat down with your former boss at this point and they were crying and, they were, what are you going to do? What did you do? What happened after that?
I started my own house cleaning business. Next thing I know, it's a little slow start, but I actually took a break because I was able to get unemployment from FedEx. So I got the highest amount of unemployment you could get for 6 months. So I'm like, well, okay, I lost my job, but thanks for the 6-month vacation. And about 5.5 months into it, I started looking for another actual job, but I just started picking up houses because I realized I wanted to be my own boss. I needed to have a variable schedule for the kids' sake because they were a little bit older now and going in different directions in school and all that. So I just knew I needed something that I could be flexible. So I started picking up houses to clean. And then it just took off because I am a bit OCD, to put it politely. So I'm very, very thorough and I'm, dependable and I'm quick, and age is slowing me down a little bit, but I still get around pretty good. And I would do 2 houses a day. I was up to 10 houses. I picked up 10 houses. I was running the Palestine Post Office rural route, which was 92 miles on Saturday. And then I was cleaning a physical therapy building on Sunday evening in Mineral Wells. So depending on what you want to do, and then every once in a while I'd pick up a little extra job here that just might be, I had a lady that had apartments and she'd call me every once in a while. Well, sometimes I had to go overnight and clean them because I couldn't fit her in my schedule.
Wow.
And I was making more money than any of the jobs I could have applied for and worked at.
Now, was this at the time, had Aaron and I met at this point or no? Was this still before?
Yeah, I think I was working at the school board around the time you guys met.
Yeah, because I was 12-ish when we met. So 12, 13, that was after Oak. That was around when Chad came into
Yeah, I was thinking
lives.
around Oak. I was working at the school board and then
Oak 23rd, yeah.
a school board, and then I got my public debt job.
Yep.
And so then I started working for the Treasury Department. That's where we talked to kind of up to that the other day was I had some emotional trauma with the, I say that the life with your dad wasn't really traumatic, but I have triggers still to this day that I realize are from that time period in my life. And then I also see triggers. Me and you and Robin were alone for about 7, 8 years. And then I had an 8-year marriage mistake. that, we discussed the other day. We don't really need to embellish that any further. That's just all. And so then it was just back to me and you, because Robin had moved along by then. She was living on her own in an apartment, and you and I moved to the river ultimately. We lived in Vienna and then moved to the river. So I was working at Public Debt when my ex-husband and I got divorced. I went from $100 and some $1,000 income to about $50,000 income. And then his new wife worked with me, who we had a problem in the past, she and I, because we all worked together at another government job. And she worked with me at the Treasury Department. So, after 6 months or so, I'm a little bit aggressive when my emotions get hurt. And I was starting to really obsess about things I shouldn't be obsessing about. So I thought it was best if I just left my job instead of wind up wearing orange or stripes the rest of my life.
Yeah.
So I walked away from a 50 grand a year job and great government benefits and everything. But I just knew my mental state was worth more than that.
Yeah.
I couldn't take the stress and the strain it was putting on me mentally, and where the darkness where it was putting me. I was starting to obsess about doing things I shouldn't do. So I just knew I had to separate from that type environment.
I do think it's very important to touch on that too. You were finding yourself constantly obsessing with the idea of essentially beating this woman's ass. That was pretty much what you had described to us.
Exactly.
And I think it's a lot to say to your maturity, I guess, your emotional maturity, to know that it was better for you to walk away at this point rather than obsess over this.
Right.
Like you chose the self route. You cared more for yourself and walked away, even if it meant hurting you financially, which that's a very tough call to make. Again, the world needs to be scared of people like you.
Yep.
I want to highlight one other point that I wouldn't even call this scratching the surface. We might be denting the paint with our fingernail here, because we glossed over Vienna, which is when all of Patrick's story took place.
Yes.
So please keep in mind that entire lifetimes and storylines are taking place within these things that we're not even mentioning.
They're getting the highlights.
I actually want to throw a little dossier in there too. I don't think that's the right word. I don't know. It just came to mind. It felt right.
It sounded good.
Yeah, right? I actually have a core memory, and I didn't tell you this the other day.
I know. I wondered what it was.
I let you know that I had a core memory. But it's coming from the house in Vienna that we completely glossed over.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember exactly what time of year it was. I feel like it was around the Christmas, New Year's, January, December area, right? I was coming to spend the night because I had a gift for Aaron. It was a Halo Reach for his
Legendary
Xbox.
Edition.
Yeah. All of the bells and whistles, everything that this man wanted.
Yep.
And I wanted to play this game with him too. And this is a core memory, right? Because I remember playing the game. We had a ton of fun. And then we watched The Walking Dead, which was my first time ever watching The Walking Dead. And then I never watched it ever again. And we went to bed, and we woke up the next morning because we had school. And you were taking us to school. And you woke us up with lemon poppy seed muffins. And to this day, lemon poppy seed muffins are my favorite. I can't eat them because of the military, but they are my favorite. And I'll never forget that.
Well, son of a gun. That's great. I have a great core memory of you.
Oh, no.
When I don't think you were in the military yet, and Aaron was in Japan, and he was talking to me on the phone on Mother's Day, and you pulled up with a dozen roses from him. Oh, that's one of my best memories of my whole life. I bawled, and Aaron's on the phone just waiting for me to stop crying, and you're just letting me hug you, holding my flowers. Oh, man. And you also brought me a Mother's Day card from you. Oh, my gosh. That was one of the best days of my whole life.
Yeah, that was incredible. I don't think it was a very hard amount of coordination between Aaron and I, but that was awesome.
Yes, because I just thought I'd get to talk to him if I was lucky, and then he had brought you up and I said, oh, man, I'm going to have to go visit him. Or he's like, you tell him I said hi next time you see him. I'm like, I will. And then here you come pulling up, and I'm like, I don't know who that is coming up my driveway. And,
it was so funny.
Oh, it was hysterical. You got me good.
Oh, man.
You got me good.
That's incredible. I'm so happy about that.
Oh, me too.
Yeah, one of the things about our mindset and my childhood and your life at this time is how present we were. We weren't on autopilot. And that's one of the things that I really think we need to retrain ourselves into being present every single day instead of being on autopilot.
Yeah.
Because we have so many memories. I literally don't have time today to tell a fraction of our stories.
Yes.
Yeah.
Even the bacon story, how every morning you would cook your own pack of bacon before you made us breakfast, and then we'd offer you bacon, and we thought it was so weird because you're like, oh, no thanks, but you were cooking your own pack of bacon before you cooked us food. I remember so many things about that Halo Reach Party, Tim, that yes, there are going to be more episodes, but we do want to talk a little more about what we've been through,
Yes.
how it changed us, and what we learned.
Yeah.
So you had a second marriage, which ended, again, I'm going to Band-Aid this, as Tim
Sure.
would say.
Yes.
Your husband, who you thought made a vow to love you no matter what, said, hey, if you don't want to be a swinger, you can't, that's just what I want to do. And you said, I'm sorry, no, I was raised and I believe in monogamy and that's what I want. So, and he said, okay, well then I don't know what to tell you. I'm going to be sleeping with other people, essentially. And so you were like, okay, well, that's not what my husband does. So I guess you're not my husband anymore. And we packed our shit and left because we'll figure it out.
Yep.
We don't need you.
Nope.
So we did. But then we had this tumultuous period where when I joined the Navy at 20, we had done the math and we'd lived in 22 different places between you and Dad.
Wow.
So it was a lot of work every single day, but it really feels like it was work worth doing,
Yes.
as we kind of touched on.
Yeah.
I kind of want to hit the next chapter before we get lost in stories and tangents.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
I did join the Navy, and I was kind of your last anchor to the world.
Yes.
When I joined the Navy, that kind of broke Mom, if I can.
Sure. Yes.
She started drinking a little bit, isolating, and she was overwhelmed by the pain of her traumas up to that point, which since I was 20, she was 50.
Yes.
So 50 years of working her tail off every day and breaking her tailbone and foot and still working and cracking ribs and
Yep.
still working and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It led her into agoraphobic tendencies where she didn't even want to leave the house. And so I would send her, I had a stipend to her so she could at least eat. And she spent a few years just kind of soul searching.
After a few lost years, though, I went through that isolation and depression and not leaving the house and stuff. That lasted for a few years, I'd say. And I think that's when I really developed my eating disorder. And I was anorexic for a couple years and exercised. But the thing is, people need to understand about eating disorders. I knew when I was trying to be logical, I needed to eat. But then you look at yourself in the mirror and you think, oh, you're just disgusting. But you're seeing more. You're not really seeing the physical shell, I think. I was so unhappy with my life and felt so bad, felt like heck, now I have 2 failed marriages and, I don't have my good job and on and on. So I didn't really feel sorry for myself. I just felt, I think it was more a subconscious thing. It was obviously a not good enough thing. I felt not good enough, never good enough. And that was something I struggled with for a very long time. So when everything was chaotic and hectic and the only thing I could control was what I ate and my weight or the shape my body was in. So I became anorexic. I exercised like a fiend. I would dance. I wouldn't eat for 2 or 3 days. And then I'd get a little lightheaded. So I'd eat some crackers, just to take the edge off so I wouldn't pass out. And, I did that for quite a while. And now I look back and see pictures and think, oh my goodness, you looked unhealthy. But at the time I thought, oh, you look good. I thought I looked like I should. But then now I realize I kind of looked a little sickly. But things get so overwhelming that even though I knew I was doing a good job, or maybe not even doing a good job, but I was doing the best job I could at the time. and I was keeping us afloat and we were surviving, I was still working in that survival mode because I had 2 children to raise by myself and a house to keep up and cars and all that. So even though I'm a strong enough person, it wasn't traumatic, I can handle a lot and my shoulders can carry a lot. It still was doing trauma to me that I didn't even really realize. Like I said, because then look at the eating disorder. That was because of trauma. The exercising and things, when your life is so out of control, you feel like you can't do a thing about any of it. That's the one thing you have control over.
Yeah.
And that's why a lot of people need to understand eating disorders a little better, I believe. So we can touch on a lot of issues here for that matter, that you're not alone. If you have an eating disorder, even, you're not alone. You can weigh 100 pounds and look in the mirror and think, oh my gosh, you're disgusting. When there's not an ounce of fat on you, you still see it because that's how you are seeing yourself in your mind's eye.
I want to talk about trauma just a little bit too, if you don't mind, Beth.
Yes, go ahead.
I do want to say that depending on what kind of trauma you've been through in life, if you have PTSD, maybe it's sometimes linked to one particular event. But a lot of trauma that people are dealing with and trying to work past these days, trauma is a compounding thing.
Exactly.
It's not a matter of, this one event. Every single person has one event that they can trace their trauma to. Me, I can trace my trauma to one event specifically.
Mm-hmm.
For you, you had 12 years of your first original marriage where the trauma was just compounding. By the time you left that marriage, you had no idea how the trauma was affecting you because it became the norm.
Yeah.
You had to work through that over time. And then here you are about, 20-ish years later after you left Forrest when Aaron leaves for the Navy.
Mm-hmm.
And now you have to stop. It's like everything that was driving you forward because you had children to take care of. You had a family to provide for. You had the things that could keep the blinders on and prevent you from seeing the trauma around you. But then after the blinders left, you're left with only the trauma.
Yes. And I really thought I would be okay with the empty nest. You hear so many people talk about the empty nest syndrome, and I thought, oh, what a bunch of crap. I can't wait to not have to be responsible for something and just get up when I want and all that. But that was one of the most traumatic events in my life was when Aaron left because we had been through compounded trauma through his childhood, whether it's family oriented or moving to another house or whatever. So then it was like, I just felt like Aaron was all I had. And I could not lose Aaron. It's like, no, me and Aaron have to stick together forever. I can't make it, So yeah, it was extremely traumatic when he left. And, but I just never expected it would hit me that hard. I mean, I was glad for him and I was so happy to see him get away from the town and get out to do things in the real world, and have some great experiences. But I didn't even realize how badly it hit me because that also compounded. The longer he was gone, the more it compounded. So that was very traumatic, Aaron Keith.
Yeah.
But I'm so glad that you went. I just can't stress that enough.
Yes. The way I'll tie this in so that it's understood as a universal thing is endurance athletes have the most scar tissue percentage-wise out of any athlete. Powerlifters, strongmen. It's the marathoners and ultramarathoners that have the most scar tissue from that consistent pressure over substantial periods of time.
Oh, wow.
So that's the kind of trauma you endured.
Yep.
It was, you were marathoning every single day, emotionally and physically, honestly.
Yep.
Every single day for 50 years. And then the last person that you could rely on had to leave in order to start their life. So then it was, guess what? Just you.
Now what do I do?
How'd you dig yourself out of that hole, and what has making it through that led to? Because that's one of the stories we're telling is hope. You'll get through it, and when you get through it, it's going to be fucking worth it.
Yes. Well, to simplify or condense, I stayed home. I mean, you sent me money, and I had a couple houses that I cleaned, and the money that you sent me covered my living expenses were very minimal. I worked a couple little jobs here and there, just like Christmas temporary jobs, just for a little chunk of money to kind of catch up and do things. I realized things was getting out of hand. I bought a little tiny house with your help and put out at my mom's property. And I really thought I would live there happily ever after and die out there. Well, then some things just came up and I realized I needed to move. I have a bit of a gypsy soul, in my defense, is why I think that we did so much moving. I just would lose interest and we'd go somewhere different. I just knew I got very, very depressed at Mom's in our little building when I was out there by myself at Mom's. And I just really hit a period. I knew that if I didn't make some changes and get pulled out of that, I wasn't going to make it. I mean, I was very depressed. I was thinking about dying on a regular basis. I'd go for days and try not to eat. I'd think, well, I could just starve to death, And I mean, so I was just doing stupid stuff. And I knew it was really sinking in deeper and deeper. And I sold, this sounds crazy, but I moved around a little bit. And I really, like you said, Aaron, I did a few years of soul searching. And I had to let a lot of stuff go. I had to end a lot of toxic relationships that were hurting me and keeping me in a very negative and sometimes volatile environment that was extremely unhealthy. So I went more to isolating in a little bit of a positive way so I could do some soul searching. And I had to get back to my confidence that had been beat down over all these years. And I had to get my self-esteem back and regroup mentally, and realize I was worth it, or I am worth it. And I do deserve everything everybody else wants or has, and I can be happy. Then I just started back. I mean, I sold my little barn, and I called it a barn, but it's a little tiny house. I sold it and all my belongings, and the dog and I bought a SUV and we headed for Montana. So I took a couple weeks and we just went from stayed in national parks and state parks, and we'd find one we wanted to stay at for a couple days, and we'd hike around and explore things, and then get in a Jimmy and drive until we were done the next time and stop for the night and spend some time. So she and I were gone for a few weeks, and I just had to come back because I felt bad abandoning my grandchildren and stuff. I thought I was being selfish. So I came home, but it took a lot of inner strength and inner soul searching. Then ultimately, to get to where I am now, I let a lot of toxicity go. I've ended a lot of relationships I never thought I would end, but I just had to preserve my mental state. That was the only way I could cope. And, they say in AA and NA, they have statements, stay away when you first get sober, or if you're trying to make these major changes in your life to survive or to break a cycle or a generational curse or whatever it may be. You need to stay away from slippery people, places, and things. You can't keep living your life as you did and expect it to be different. And I don't care how much inner strength you have, you cannot, it's not going to change. I mean, you have a lot of strength, but you have to realize these are very, very hard slopes to stay off of. And I knew I had to let a lot of stuff go, and I did. And I'm a firm believer in God. And I went to church and had one of my lifelong friends and her husband prayed for me. And I could just feel the bitterness and the resentment and all these things I'd been hanging on to for so long just leave me. And I started going to church again, and I started replacing negative thoughts with positive. And it's not an easy thing. I mean, it takes a conscious effort. And when you have a bad thought, replace it with 3 good ones. You have to force yourself to do it for a long time, and then it just becomes habit. And you catch yourself, you wake up and you're feeling positive instead of negative. And it just happens that way. And then God blessed me with my third husband. But the third one's a charm. I mean, he's the man of my dreams. Our home where he already owned and lives, everything is perfect for me. He was perfect for me. This place is perfect for me. I have such peace of mind and such contentment and happiness. It just is. So, you do survive. I figured I would be by myself. I mean, that was okay. I've always had a dog, and dogs truly are your best friend. Yeah. And I've always had a dog that was by my side. So I just assumed that was how the rest of my life was going to go. I was completely done with even thinking about dating or finding a partner or man or anything. And then when you least expect it, it truly does come along. And it was right before another crisis in my life happened. So I feel like God brought me Randy, which helped me through that crisis. And then right before my dog passed away, a girl who had been my best friend for 14 years or something, she and I came back into each other's lives. And then a month later, I lost my dog, but I had her back. So it was like those things softened the blow. And I think because I've had a lot and I've had nothing, when I came back from my little trip out west with the dog, I stayed in the tent for 3 months because I couldn't find a place that would accept my dog in the country where we needed to be. We're not city people. I need to be in a country and not see other neighbors if possible. So looking for a place like that to live took me about 3 months, and me and the dog just stayed in the tent. That's perfectly fine. You can do what you have to do, especially when it's leading to something you want to do. So just don't ever give up and keep hanging in there, because it's just all about you. You're the only one that can change the situation if you're in one you don't want to be in.
Yeah.
Regardless of what steps it takes to do that.
I think something really important that you talked about too was you started cutting out the toxicity in your life in order to preserve your mental health.
Yes.
And during that time period, you're finding out how to love yourself. What I find interesting about that is because I know one thing that we talked about a lot here was how you've been in survival mode for 50 years or so. And that's something very difficult to do, right? It's very hard if you've been doing something for so long to get out of that. But before you were finally able to turn that survival mode off and actually love yourself and accept everything about yourself, it's almost like that survival mode kind of did one last thing for you to help you cut all the toxicity out. I know it sounds kind of strange to put it like that, but it's like you got rid of you got rid of this last bit of what you needed to, and it stemmed from this thing that you were also getting rid of. Almost like it's hurrah out the door in a way. And now here you are loving yourself. You've put in the work. You've walked the walk. And I can't say that I know anybody else who is as tough as you. Physically, mentally, spiritually. You are a perfect example of what I want to be like.
Oh,
I want to be able to tell my story to somebody in a couple years and to mimic what you have told me today.
Well, thank you so much. You keep on the right path, because you're an amazing person yourself.
If we could send you through knife and fork school, you'd be a great motivational speaker.
Yeah.
But I think there'd be too much spit and dirt for the masses in our current presentation style.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yes, I have softened a lot as I've gotten older, and even Randy has helped. I feel like I was kind of a diamond in the rough.
One thing that I love that you talked about, and I think you're trying to express presently and one thing that really impressed me is whenever I said you let go of those toxic relationships, you really emphasized that the main thing that helped you was letting go of your own toxic behaviors, letting go of the victim mentality, realizing people weren't attacking you. They were just doing their best, and most people suck most of the time because it's almost impossible to think about someone else's circumstances when you're going through also the hardest day you've ever had up to that point.
Right.
Anyway, that's one thing I want to highlight is that you said, yes, I let go of toxic people around me, but our behavior does kind of dictate the people that are going to be attracted to us.
Absolutely.
So you realized that your negative mindset was leading to negative people around you. And so you realized in order to fix the root, you have to let go and grow in a different direction.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
There's a phrase Aaron said the other day that it shook me a bit, I think. But it was something along the lines of, we're not just trying to save the tree, we're trying to save the root. You remember saying that, Aaron? And
yeah, what was that?
I know it was during our brainstorm session here. That's exactly what you did, right, in this situation.
Yes.
You not only focused on saving the tree, but you saved the root. And that's incredible.
And I had to cut some branches off to save the root, or it was going to die. I mean, it just was. And I'm going to...
But you realized the soil needed more nitrogen.
Yes.
You realized that the soil needed more potassium.
Yes.
And so you've found it.
Water and sunlight.
Absolutely. And I will say, people have it's becoming better, but people still have a dark connotation attached with mental health issues. And I will say, I still was having some outbursts, even though I was feeling a lot better, when I still had a lot of, and this showed me trauma that I brought into my situation with Randy. I was still not feeling worthy. I would be going along real good for a while, and then all of a sudden I'd think, I don't even know why you have me here. I don't deserve this. And I would freak out a little bit, and I could feel them coming, but I couldn't control it. But it was just really overwhelming when it would happen. And a couple of times I've tried different antidepressants or something of that nature. Well, I went to the doctor and said, I need to be on something for mood swings or to help me stay calm. And she did put me on Effexor, which has changed my life so much. I feel like, I am 100% calmer. I don't feel that rough edge and exterior. So people don't need to think either if you're struggling. I always just my philosophy was I just white knuckled it and go on, grit your teeth until it quits hurting.
Yeah.
Well, that's exhausting. That's very exhausting. So, if you can be prescribed something that helps, you saying you were so amazed when you went to the Navy, Aaron, because I was so hard on you, and I'd say, oh, suck it up. You don't need a pill, or you'll be okay. Go back out and play. And then you realize when you went to the Navy, if something hurt, you could go to the infirmary and get a pill and you'd feel better.
Healthcare was insane when I discovered it, man.
What a concept, And like I said, I just try to toughen them up.
Shit.
Just suck it up. You'll be all right. But,
It's
honestly,
too far from my heart to kill me, Mom said.
that's right.
Yeah.
And so, it's okay, though, you don't have to white knuckle it. You don't have to just grit your teeth and hold every fiber of your being tense as you can possibly hold it until it passes. You can get some relief and help these days. That Effexor has made such a huge difference in my life and my husband's life, and probably everybody that knows me. You, I'm sure, Aaron, have seen a difference in me. And it's just the overall everything in my life that changed from so negative to so positive. It's just a complete change in my whole life, and my stress is gone. So that has played a part in it too. But, I still wouldn't be the level I am if my doctor had not given me something to help me mentally stay on track. So don't ever feel bad about having to ask.
Yeah.
Again, just to reinforce that positivity, we've even done Geodon. We've tried some other mood stabilizers as things change.
Yes.
I've been on several different antidepressants before I landed on Prozac.
Yeah.
And I think Prozac's fine for me because I just need that little bit of extra kick.
Yep.
So my lowest lows aren't quite as deep.
Absolutely.
Could I live with those much deeper lows? Yes. Would it suck? Yeah. So if you have a problem with me taking Prozac, that's something you're going to have to deal with.
Exactly.
Because I'm going to take my meds, and if anyone else has store-bought serotonin and you're trying to shame them, I'm going to crap on you, my guy.
That's right. That's exactly right. Because you have to, sometimes you do need a little help, and it's a chemical imbalance, just like somebody takes pills for cancer or for a heart attack or something.
Yeah.
My mind goes fast and I do obsess. So my bigger problem is I have mood swings and it spirals. I can feel it coming and I think, oh no. But it's a little buildup and I can feel myself spiral. And then when I'm out of control, it's ugly. I can't stop it. I know it's happening and I'm thinking you're being irrational as you know what, but I just can't reel it in. And this Effexor is what they prescribed me, but I tried Geodon, it didn't work. I've tried a couple others, like Aaron said, it doesn't work. This Effexor, I just feel totally calm. And I'm not drugged out or foggy or anything. It just has helped take that edge off of the things that get me worked up. And my mind doesn't obsess. It's a wonderful change in my overall everything about how I feel.
Yeah, I spent years of dealing with anxiety, depression, and drinking a lot. And
me too.
It's awful. First of all, we didn't even touch on the drinking as much as because something kind of came to mind too. Did you drink at all before the depression and isolation?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Because I wasn't sure. I don't think I'd ever seen you drink ever.
Well, probably by when you came around, I wasn't really drinking.
No. So she drank whenever she was partying with Dad, and then she kind of had her fill. So most of our childhoods, she just smoked pot to deal with the stress and the anxiety and stuff.
To stay out of jail.
Yeah.
Yes. When I found out you were on pot and then I realized that pot's not the devil and stuff, I was like, oh, thank God. I'm so glad. At least she had pot. I wish you had Effexor sooner.
Right. Me too. I was a little high strung.
Yeah. Even all the stand-up bits that I have of like stuff going wrong and you being like, oh, wow, shit went south, huh? And then we just would figure out like how to recover.
Well, there's no
That
sense
should
in
be on a
panicking.
shirt. That should be on one of our shirts in the future, Aaron. Shit
We
went
can
south,
sticker it.
huh?
Real quick sometimes.
That went bad quick,
Wow.
man.
Shit, my
Yeah,
my-
no.
Damn.
Yeah,
Do you
medication.
need a hit? Because I got a bowl packed. Like,
Medication can be a game changer, man.
Oh, absolutely.
When they put me on my SSRI and my sleeping medication, which I just got upped again the other day.
Oh boy.
Jesus.
Yeah, I know, right?
You need to get into your parasympathetic system, my guy.
Dude, my insomnia is kicking my ass.
Oh no.
Sleep hygiene.
Yeah, it's quite unfortunate. But hey,
Oh.
you know what? They make medication for that. I take that medication.
Good for
I'm
you.
content with that. Yeah,
Store-bought's fine.
Store-bought is
If you
fine.
don't have an hour a day to study and meditate and do this and that, you can take some hydroxyzine.
I don't have an hour a day to do that. But I tell you what I do have. I have BB's coffee.
Yes.
Yay.
And we have shirts.
We do
Buy
have
our
shirts.
shirts.
We do have shirts. We have BB's coffee. And one thing else too, Beth, that we did talk about. I learned this just now too about you having that eating disorder. Our episode where I brought my wife Brittany on, she talks about her eating disorder and how she's dealt with that over the past 10 years.
Yeah.
And it really struck a chord with me whenever you were talking about it, because hearing how she saw it, like how it affected her, and hearing how it affected you, I could see the similarities.
Oh wow. Mhm.
And I feel like it's very important for people to understand that sometimes when they're suffering through something like an eating disorder, they don't realize they have that. I feel like that's a lot of these mental health issues and disorders and stuff that we're facing and that we're trying to talk about, is people just don't realize that they're going through it.
Oh no.
I didn't realize my anxiety was through the roof until somebody from the outside was like, hey, you need to stop being so concerned and being anxious and having a panic attack every time you leave the house.
Yeah. Oh my.
And it was like, oh, you know what? Maybe that isn't normal.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I've had so many things that I need to remark on, but the big one that was most recent to me was reflecting humanity back. You know, you had these cognitive distortions, they would call it in modern psychology, I think,
Right.
that you had to clear up, but you can't see what's going on because when you look at the mirror, you're bringing all of your traumas and your perceptions, and you already know what you're looking for. You're looking for fat. So even if you have a little bit of skin, aha, I found it, the thing I was looking for. You have confirmation bias. And that's why we do have to get into our parasympathetic system and relax so we can take an objective look at what's going on and realize, I'm doing a good job. I need to give myself a break. Since I can't control my emotions, I need to talk to a shrink. Maybe I should try some Geodon. Oh, that didn't work. How about we try some Effexor? Maybe just Prozac is what's going to end up working. But just showing that compassion, we will be bringing you back.
Thank you so
I
much.
firmly believe.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us today, Mom.
You are my two favorite sons, you know. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. And a huge thank you to you, the listener,
This has been Aaron,
and Tim with
Beth.
my mom. A huge thank you to Highland Markle for the original music,
Share this episode with a friend.
or someone who could benefit from it.
Leave a comment below if there's a topic you want to hear our take on.
All pertinent links can be found in the episode description.
Be good to yourselves and each other.
We love you.
Peace.
And P.S.
Oh.
Mom, go ahead. We didn't ask you if you had anything else, so this is a special encore for you, the listener.
Yeah.
No, I don't. I'm just really proud of both of you and what you're doing and how you're reaching out to help others. I couldn't be more proud of the two men that you guys have turned into. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for having me.
Oh boy.
And thank you for calling me a nerd.
I will call you a nerd anytime you need to hear it.
Be good to yourselves and each
Okay.
other. We love you. Peace.